There we go. Okay.
Perfect.
I'll kick it off, I suppose.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Angela Knowles. I am the project director for Plan for Health New Jersey. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey and also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I'm also on the executive committee of the American Planning Association's New Jersey chapter. And I am joined today by Robin Vlamis and Candace Davenport, both members of the Plan for Health New Jersey project team. So I will let them introduce themselves. Robin, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Robin Blamis, I recognize a lot of the names popping up on the screen, so good to see you all. I'm a health educator. I've been a past president of NJ Sophie, currently work with the Hillsborough Township Health Department.
And hi, everyone. I'm Candace Davenport, Health Officer for Maplewood and South Orange Health Departments, and also past president of NJ Sophie. I'm also the Public Health Project Team Lead for Plan for Health NJ. Thanks so much for joining, everyone.
Great, thank you. So I do not recognize a lot of the names here. So this is the point of why we're doing this project and this program. Plan for Health New Jersey is really about integrating health and land use planning. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the Plan for Health New Jersey program and where we can kind of make those connections between public health and land use planning. So first, we would like to get to know a little bit more about you. If you can see that QR code on the top right of your screen, you can go ahead and scan that, and it should bring you to an online survey where we will be able to see some of the responses to these questions. So.
And
Yes.
Angela, I'm going to go ahead and take over sharing to bring
Yep.
up the Mentimeter. That's
Yep,
okay.
definitely. Yep. Should I stop sharing mine then?
I think I can just take over.
Okay, go for it. Look at that. Perfect.
Okay. All
So
right.
yeah, when you scan that QR code, you should see questions pop up on your phone. And then when you answer the questions, we will see the answers pop up. I think if you go into the side.
Yeah, this is sorry, hold on
No,
one second. This is not the right Mentimeter.
Oh,
This is
the old one. Oh, shoot.
Oh, that's for the league.
No,
That's not the right one.
not the right one.
Sorry, I just have to share my screen on the right one. It should be the right
QR
link
code
for everybody.
Okay.
Yes.
The access code. Can you share the access code for those who are using a browser?
Okay. You see my screen now?
It hasn't changed. It's still on the assistant director. So yeah, maybe.
Okay. Now it's coming through great. Okay.
Yep, you got it.
Yes.
Health
there
educator. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So there should also be a code that folks can type in if they're on a browser. I don't know if that's maybe if you have it, if you can put that in the chat.
Let's see. I don't see it.
Yeah. Okay.
Up front. If you want to try and troubleshoot that, Angela, while I present the slides, maybe, because I don't see a code.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, so first question, what is your role title? It looks like we have mostly health educators here, which is not surprising. Does your health department cover a sole municipality, region, or county? Okay. It looks like we have a mix. Regions, counties, municipalities. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Have you ever worked with a county or municipal level planner to advance a health project? We're expecting mostly no's, but I'll be impressed if there's some yeses. That's good. Okay, most of the no's are coming through. And if you can't use the Mentimeter, feel free to put comments in the chat as well.
Yeah,
So
I'm
mostly no's.
having trouble logging in, so.
Okay, sorry.
I also was able to put the Mentimeter URL link in the chat so people can
Oh,
use
that's
it
good.
as well if that
Okay.
helps.
Thank you.
You're
Oh,
welcome.
perfect. Thanks.
Okay. So this is kind of what we were expecting. And the purpose of this project really is to get planners and health departments working together. Were you involved in your municipality's most recent master or comprehensive plan? I was actually thinking a better question might be, have you ever read or accessed or looked at your municipality's master plan? Because for a lot of us, the answer is probably no. Okay. So mostly no's.
Yeah.
In your efforts to improve health, have you ever tried to make land use changes, either through ordinances or policies? Mostly no. Yep. Okay, that's kind of what we were anticipating. So we have some great information for you coming up. Where do you see the overlap between health outcomes and land use? Or maybe you don't see the overlap. I'm going to say that too. Good. Quality of life, physical health. Yes, built environment, quality of life. Yes, traffic. Yes, green spaces. Great. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing here. And Angela, if you want to take back over.
Sure.
On the slides.
Yeah, it's great to see all those responses because that's exactly what this project addresses. All of those different areas where we see now the cross section between planning and public health. So just a little bit more about the program itself. The goal here is really to advance public health and planning. This is a continuation from previous efforts. There was another Plan for Health project that was also funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation through Rutgers. That project focused mostly on food access. So with this, we're researching more issues related to more areas of public health and planning. This project is also about building a new relationship between planners and health officials. As was just brought up now, local leaders don't necessarily put the two together. Going through this process as a professional planner, I certainly learned about a whole world of data that's out there that, when we put plans together, we look at census data, we look at Department of Labor data, we look at housing data, but we don't necessarily look at health data. So knowing that that's out there, and now knowing that there's folks like you that have that knowledge, part of this project is to educate the planners as to where those resources live and the people they can go to for help to find them. So if nothing else, we don't learn anything else from this project. At least we now know about each other and we know where we can get all that information. The focus of this project is the health of people. Traditionally, we would plan for land and the types of uses that would be developed on that land. And ultimately, people would benefit from the planning work, but people were never really at the forefront of those land use decisions. So through this program, we're introducing a new way of thinking about planning for health and for the health of the people who live and work and play in those communities, and proposing strategies for land use to contribute to the health and well-being of those people. We are also providing funding for towns so that they can implement the strategies that we're recommending. So we'll talk a little bit more about a grant program that we have just starting. That's just getting underway, and actually the deadline is today for a select group of municipalities to submit letters of interest for participating in that program. There we go. So our scope for this project, it's a 2-year project where we are creating a series of toolkits. There are 6 of them, plus some interactive mapping. And the toolkit topic areas include access to healthcare, access to healthy food and agriculture, environmental health and sustainability, mobility, housing and community development, and policy and civic engagement. So those are all things that as planners, we would, work into a master plan. And a master plan has lots of different components. There are several components that are required by state law that need to be in there. Goals and objective statement for a municipality has to be included in a master plan. A land use plan has to be included in a master plan in order to effectuate zoning. Some people argue that an affordable housing plan has to be included because of the Fair Share and Housing Act. So, but it's not in the statute, but it is a very important part of planning and master planning. So, all of the other things that go into a master plan are optional. So if a town has a conservation plan, that's an optional plan. If they have a farmland preservation plan, that's an optional plan. And it's really meant to be tailored to whatever the needs of the community are, because not every town's going to need the same types of plan elements. So we tried to focus our toolkits on things that we thought were important to health, and that would typically be found in a master plan. So we're looking at, as I said, healthcare, food, agriculture, environmental health, transportation, mobility, and housing. And then we have one that's more sort of an overarching one, which is policy and civic engagement. And that's really, it's become a really great tool for municipalities to use to understand how to reach out to their communities about these different issues. But then also it explains, and Candace will talk more about this later, it explains a bit more about the resident side and how residents can participate in the decision-making process in their town. We are creating a website that will house all of this information and the data, as well as funding resources. So wherever we're making recommendations for towns to implement these things in their communities, we're also linking that to potential funding resources that they can use to actually implement them. And then we're also providing additional resources so towns can do additional research if they want to, and tailor the toolkits really to their needs. As I said, we are starting a grant program with a select municipalities to sort of test it out for phase one. We were looking for municipalities that were either updating their master plan or have really strong health departments, that we've, just from our project team, we felt that they were sort of ready to enter into a grant program like this. Phase two of that project will open up to micro grants and open it up to more municipalities. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But going back to the idea that we're trying to connect health and planning, health was really a foundation for planning. And this is a quote from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which says, "Scientists have found that the conditions in which we live and work have an enormous impact on our health long before we ever see a doctor." And you can see that impact on our land use decisions on people's health. So for instance, looking at where industry is located in a community versus where the open space is located. Any traffic that's created because of disconnected housing, which causes stress. Looking at the EJ communities, which was mentioned earlier too, and vulnerable populations, and really working to get people out of harm's way, especially during extreme weather events, which are becoming more extreme and more frequent over time. So this is really an opportunity, this program, to reverse the traditional thinking and plan our communities to benefit people's health. And as I said, think about the people first. History of planning and health sort of started as a way for public health officials to improve people's social, physical, and mental health by looking at the infrastructure and the connection to how disease was spreading, and ultimately trying to prevent the spread of disease through the infrastructure that was available at the time. And planners at that time were looking at the city as a dynamic built environment, which included restructuring the basis of sanitation in cities and looking at sewer survey planning and at that time what was called town site consciousness, which was really looking at how open space played a role in the health of communities and how housing was centered around open spaces. And this was back in the mid to late 1800s, when technology was not as advanced, obviously, as today, but the thinking was still there. And from that point on, we sort of entered this on again, off again relationship. Health and planning were sort of getting along, but not really talking to each other. So in the mid 20th century to about the 1990s, there was an economic boom, which led to the development of housing and roads and schools, created more traffic, used up more land, and there was less focus on environmental quality and less focus on the individual quality of life for residents. So this led to a greater public health mission to address infectious and chronic diseases as air quality declined, water quality declined, farms were taken up for housing tracts, and schools and schools and other services were disconnected from the communities in which they served. But over the last 20 years or so, there's been a shift in the way of the culture of how we think about planning and health. So there's this culture of health model where towns are starting to look more at the social and structural determinants of health. We're looking at more universal design concepts to create equitable access to all uses for all people. We're talking more about environmental justice designations for communities so we can focus resources in the areas that need them most. And through this project, we're really looking at land use and zoning as a contributor to average life expectancy, which I can tell you, again, having gone through this project, was not something that was ever on our radar that was possible, that we could actually look at how we design our communities to increase life expectancy. For this project in particular, we also have a call to look at equity, not equality necessarily, and to respond to the unique needs of vulnerable populations throughout the state. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation. So the way we're attempting to kind of, bring planning and public health back together and have a happily ever after, hopefully, is that we're breaking this out into what are the town's goals for improving health in their communities, and then proposing planning strategies for implementation that could potentially help do that. And then what is the benefit to health that would be the outcome over time. So for instance, these are just a few examples. This is by no means, the end all be all. This is just a few examples we pulled out from the toolkits. If a town was looking to improve air quality, they might want to look at micro mobility strategies or zoning restrictions on warehouse and tractor trailers, which both reduce the impact of automobile exhaust on air quality, and over time could improve air quality, which creates reductions in respiratory and heart illnesses and associated challenges, and a reduction in instances of cancer. So now one thing planners are used to is that in our profession, by nature, we plan for 10, 20 years down the road of what a community's vision is and what they want to achieve. So something like improving air quality, we know is not going to happen overnight, but by potentially bundling several strategies, for instance, more parks and open space, more farmland, improving public engagement to be able to voice concerns, and addressing the impacts of climate change, all of these things can contribute to better health outcomes, and perhaps sooner rather than later. Another example would be if the community's goal would be to have equitable access to parks, open space, and farmland, the town may want to look at planning strategies where they do cluster zoning ordinances, which is when housing developments are clustered on a smaller piece of a farm, let's say. And then, so rather than taking up the entire area as they may be allowed to do, the town chooses to cluster the housing in one area of the farm and preserve the rest of it. So that way we are adding to our preserved open space in that town. The town may also want to do a study on preserved and targeted open space. They could also look at reducing permitting fees for farmers markets so that there's more access to sell their produce. In this case, the health impacts could be reducing cases of obesity, improving mental health, and just overall well-being and improved nutrition. So those are just a couple examples. I don't want to take up too much time to go through all of them because we have a lot to get through, but there's more like this in the toolkits, which will be available to everyone soon. So I will turn it over to Candace, I think.
Yeah.
At this point. Okay.
Hi, thanks, Angela. So as you may know, we have been trying in public health to bridge the gap between the planners and public health for quite some time. This is an example from 2012 when Ninjacho received a grant from Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to work together with the American Architects Foundation. And it is a brochure that says the components of a healthy community design. So we were already thinking about inclusive parks, greenways, urban architecture, agriculture, healthy buildings, complete streets, right? So the term complete streets is now, in our lexicon, but back then, even in 2012, 13 years ago, it wasn't. So moving to next slide. So some of our efforts, if you could just click through this slide here, there'll be two documents that come up. So the American Planning Association on their end, we're also working on documents during 2014 to 2017. Angela alluded to the initiative that was put together by the American Public Health Association and the American Planning Association, funded by the CDC, to look at health in all policies, mainly looking at just physical activity and food access. Out of that came the ideas of health impact assessments, and then the idea of health in all policies being developed to promote public health. Next slide. Yep, you can advance to the next slide. Yep, perfect. Other documents that American Planning Association were also working towards, this is now 2019, 2020, was healthy plan making. So they're showing towns, this is what it looks like to build a healthy town. Here are some examples. And then they developed metrics for planning healthy communities. Some of these documents were already are built into the Plan for Health NJ toolkit. So we'll keep moving forward. But it is interesting to note that of those two slides, I wonder how many health professionals have ever read them. And so this is a time where we're really encouraging the public health community to take a look at these documents, get familiar with some of the things that the planning community has been familiar with, and vice versa. So Trenton was a part of this program during 2014, 2017 to look at food insecurity. And they were the first people to put in an actual food security element into their master plan. This was groundbreaking because we've never actually focused on a health issue in a master plan, but it only focused on food security. The other document is from Rutgers, looking at integrating health and community design and decision-making. So again, and this is for municipalities. Again, we're right there, we're talking about it, but again, how many public health professionals read these two documents? Next slide. If you are not familiar with the Rutgers Center for Urban Policy Research, I would definitely encourage you to do so. CUPR is a great resource for municipalities, especially because they do urban research and look at governance and planning and public health at the same time. So just want to promote that as a resource as we move forward. Next slide. Look at Camden. So Camden City developed not just a food security element in their master plan, they actually created a health element in their master plan. So they looked at everything from not only demographics, but the community health, environmental health, housing, land use, transportation, and mobility. So they really were taking a more holistic approach. And this is where, again, we're building off of each other. What's important to note here for Camden is that this focuses only on Camden City, not the county. So they took their slice and they really did a comprehensive approach to look at it. And what we want to do with Plan for Health NJ is enable your towns to do the same thing. Next slide. We just want to give a nod to another great organization in New Jersey, which is New Jersey Future. If you're not familiar with NJ Future or these two documents, you might want to take a look at it. Create Great Places to Age in New Jersey is an important document to know, considering that the population in the next decade is going to increase with a senior population. So how are you designing your towns to address more seniors living in your spaces? And then the next document is creating great places to age for every person in every neighborhood. Again, looking at age, but also other demographic factors to really help you figure out and design the community for the community in mind. Next slide. And I think this is Robin.
Sure, I'll take this. Thanks. So Sustainable Jersey, if you could guys give me a thumbs up on a reaction if you've worked with Sustainable Jersey before. This is a great organization that helps municipalities become more environmentally and sustainable for the future, and with a health focus. So we are building our website and toolkits similar to the model that Sustainable Jersey developed. And we plan to kind of build off all of the success that they've had, in that we will refer people to sustainable actions. Let's say you adopt a land use ordinance to help protect wetlands, for example. That will then direct you to a Sustainable Jersey action so that your municipality can apply for points for that. So really hoping to build off the success of Sustainable Jersey with our work here. And healthy community planning. These are amazing documents provided by a collaboration between the New Jersey Department of Health and Department of Environmental Protection. The data right now is a few years old, but you can download reports by municipality, and it gives you a great snapshot of the health of your community, and specifically the environmental concerns that you should be looking at. So definitely recommend checking that out.
And I just want to add, important to note that while this information is from 2022, it's still very vital. But the data, as we are collecting them, was from census tract data, which is now not something that we are collecting because they've stopped collecting at the local level. So anything you can do to advocate for more data collection at the municipal level is greatly appreciated.
Good point.
So a little primer here on municipal land use law. I'm gonna put my nerdy planner hat on. The municipal land use law is essentially the planner's guide to land use law in New Jersey. The statute outlines how a municipality can form a planning board and how they form a zoning board, and how they create a master plan, how they implement a master plan, how they implement capital improvement programs that can help fund that implementation. And on the very first page of the statute, it outlines the purposes of the act. So as it's written here and quoted, the purpose of the act is to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. So now this is the only time the words health or public health is mentioned in the municipal land use law. There's no mention of health equity, and only in the last 10 years or so did they add language related to environmental sustainability and climate change. So the interesting thing about this is that if you have a developer that comes into town and whatever they're proposing requires a variance from the town's land use ordinance, that means they're proposing a project that includes some component that's not permitted in whatever zone they're looking to develop in. They have to go before the zoning board to request a variance from that part of the town's land use ordinance. Guaranteed, their professional planner will cite this purpose of the act to attempt to persuade the zoning board that what the developer is proposing promotes the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Yet nowhere else in the municipal land use law is this referred to or encouraged. So the fact that we're now building this program around making those connections between public health and land use planning, the hope is that planners can start creating plans and ordinances that consider the health of people first, and that developers will have to abide by those rules and create projects that do the same. That may be pie in the sky, but that's what we are aiming for. That we believe will really start to move the needle on creating better health outcomes for our communities through our land use decisions and design. So we're going to take you through a little bit of our toolkit development here, what the program is trying to achieve through these, as I mentioned, these different components of planning and public health. So as I mentioned before, these are all of the different toolkits that we've developed, in addition to data and mapping tools that, as I said, will be available on our website. Um, in each of those toolkits are a number of subtopic areas. And again, we tried to think of everything that would possibly be related to these in terms of planning and public health. These have all been vetted through technical advisory committees, through our advisory committee for the project itself. And our project team, we've peer reviewed them, and we also have a planning studio at the Blaustein School at Rutgers happening right now, where they are also sort of critiquing these and seeing how they actually work in real life, in real time, with 3 municipalities in central New Jersey. So, um, you know, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can kind of see they really run the gamut of sort of big picture things down to designing for, safe and accessible, mobility, and connecting housing and heat islands and shade trees. I mean, there's a lot here. And it will all be available on our website for the public to use very soon. Within each of those 30 some subtopic areas, when you go to the website, it would open up to, in this section, it will have sort of an introduction about what that subtopic area is. So if we're looking at heat islands, it'll give you a description about what that is, why, sort of solving for heat islands is beneficial to public health. We have a section where we kind of explain how to conduct analysis around this. So if a town is looking to, again, solve certain issues, they might want to look to certain data and mapping for certain reasons. We then give the list of the data and mapping resources that we have available on our website. And our interactive mapping tool includes a lot of data that was sourced from various resources. Because we don't have a lot of layers, GIS layers for health necessarily, we've also given locations where towns can look at other websites and other data sources to get that information, and then they can kind of do that analysis on their own. We give sample master plan language. So if a town wanted to, again, address heat islands, for instance, there is a sample master plan goal right there in the toolkit that they could essentially copy and paste if they wanted to, or tailor it to be more specific to their community. We also give implementation strategies and case studies for rural, suburban, and urban communities. Just realizing that New Jersey is so diverse in demographics, in topography, in geography. There's a lot of different areas to cover. So we tried to make the implementation strategies and case studies as relevant to all types of communities the best that we could. We also give redevelopment plan sample language. So if a town has a redevelopment plan for a certain area, a piece of property, or a larger area, they can incorporate this public health language into the redevelopment plan to, again, start moving that needle towards creating and designing healthier communities. We also then give a list of a variety of resources. Again, as I said, if towns wanted to take their research further and do more above and beyond what we're presenting here, they're able to do that. So that all will be found on our website. As I said, we will also have funding resources listed to help towns figure out how they can implement these things in their communities as well. So one example, and I sort of touched on this a little bit, if we wanted to identify, a town wants to identify a health issue. So say they have a lack of physical activity, they could go to our website, find the strategy to address. They might want to encourage more biking. They would select the toolkit that they would need to be able to do that. They would look at safe and accessible biking for all. And then they would look at how to adopt sample master plan goals or redevelopment language in their community. So as I said, we give all of that language right here. We have the objective statements. the metrics that they might want to look at. Now, most master plans don't include metrics, but it's a really good idea to make sure that what they're proposing will work over time and that they will see progress happen and change happen. And then the redevelopment plan language, which is there as well. So that's just one example of the 30 some that we have
I'll
available.
add to Angela, you
Yeah.
just go back 1 minute. The way you can think about this as a health educator is, if you're in your community health needs assessment said, you have high rates of chronic disease, diabetes, heart disease, you have high rates of physical inactivity. You might think about, okay, how do we encourage physical activity? We want more people to bike. So a typical health educator might say, okay, how do we do that? Let's do a class for kids to learn how to bike. Let's give out bike helmets. Let's map out bike routes and distribute the maps to people. This project is really just giving you one more tool to be able to try and address the health issue. So in addition to doing those outreach programs and education, now you can also affect the built environment where you're going to try and make biking safer and accessible for all. And you're literally writing that into the language of the town's master plan so that the town, it's codified. The town has to focus on this. If it's in the redevelopment language, if a new apartment building is built, they have to include bike racks. It's a long-term view and a long-term sustainable way of affecting all of these different health issues. And this is just one example of the many, many others that we have.
Great, thank you for that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the data and mapping tools, and we didn't really have time to kind of do a real-time presentation of the tool itself. So we have just a couple screenshots of what the tool looks like, what it can do, how a town could do that analysis depending on what they were looking to achieve. So here we're looking at heat islands. This is New Brunswick. And as you can see from the color scale over here in the legend, obviously the darker the red, the hotter the temperatures for land surface in that area. A health official, a town could overlay public places to keep cool in New Jersey. And then you can kind of see where those are located around New Brunswick. And, if you go back to the toolkits under Urban Heat Island, a sample goal for that town might be to increase the access to cooling places, cooling stations in that part of town. Making sure that there's access to them so that they, that there are sidewalks or, public transportation stops nearby, ways for people to get there when they need to. So there's a whole sort of host of different layers that could go on this to ensure that the town is connecting the land use decision with the health outcome.
And not only that, just to add here, climate change is just going to get worse before it gets better. And so the importance of having places to cool off is important. So you can say, yes, we're going to increase the number of public places to cool off in New Jersey. But I'd like to note that there's a ribbon of blue that goes around the border of New Brunswick. That's the river, the old Raritan. And we should be looking at a plan that says, hey, if climate change and heat is just going to increase over time, what are we going to do using this wonderful natural resource to help all of our community address the heat issue and the climate change issues? So there's forward planning that can come from this, not just the short term, but also in like the next 10, 20 years.
Thanks. And I see that Robin put in the chat the link to the tool. So if anyone wants to go in and just kind of play around with it, turn layers on and off, look at your town, your neighborhood, you're welcome to do that. We would also welcome any feedback. If anyone finds anything or is looking for something and doesn't find it that you think should be included, as a health official, you're a health educator, you're out there in the world, doing this stuff every day. If there's something that you see that's missing, please let us know so that we can add it. Just another quick example is looking at grocery stores and access to food and transportation. So again, looking at how those the land use decisions of where those facilities are versus how walkable the neighborhoods are. It was raised by our project team leader who was focusing on healthy food access and agriculture, had said, it's one thing if a neighborhood is walkable, if you're just walking around, but if you're somebody who's going to the grocery store via public transportation, you have all your bags with you, then you have to get back home after grocery shopping. How walkable really is that neighborhood? So overlaying pieces like this where you can see, the bus stop within the quarter-mile buffer of the bus stop, the walkability score where the food grocery stores or bodegas or whatever are, you can kind of make that analysis as to if there's more that needs to be done to make those facilities more accessible to people.
And one of the things I'd like to add before we move to the next slide is you'll see that the walkability score and the number of grocery stores, I want to point you to what would be 8 o'clock on the screen. And you'll see this area where the walkability is not great. And there is a limited amount of grocery stores with that arrow that's on the screen here. And then we can move on to the next slide, which kind of points to food insecurity. Please note the color of food insecurity is highest in that same area that we were talking about. So again, the results or the health outcomes that we're used to measuring downstream are definitely impacted by the things that are happening upstream. And by using planning, we can help address the downstream outcomes. There's a circle there that looks directly at Rutgers University. And even though there were a lot of grocery stores and a lot of transportation availability, there was still a high food insecurity issue. And that's something that the township should look at as well. Why? And going out into the community and asking those important questions is part of the project as well.
So Robin's going to talk a little bit about how we can make changes at the local level.
Yeah, so this is kind of a side-by-side list of what health officials use and what planners use. And again, one of the goals of this project is really to bring these two groups together to find the common ground. So planners need to know about Healthy New Jersey 2030 and the State Health Improvement Plan. Planners might not know that we conduct community health needs assessments and develop community health improvement plans. Planners have New Jersey State Development and Redevelopment Plan, which is something similar to our state health plan. The planners use their comprehensive master plan and its elements to plan into the future. Both of us use health data, but in different ways. We could teach the planners a lot about how we use health data to identify areas of health inequities. The planners have a planning board. Health officials have the Board of Health. So what we're really trying to do is bring these two groups together to say, how can we apply public health considerations or health impact assessments for future development and redevelopment. And at the core, make sure that civic engagement is promoted and supported so that it's the community having an active role in the decision-making and planning process. So I'll talk through the civic engagement part of our website. Many of you are probably familiar with County Health Rankings Model of Health. The left-hand side, this was kind of their older model in terms of what impacts health. We've learned over time that it's not just all of the health behaviors and access to care. It's really, if you look at the right-hand model, societal rules, the power structure, those written and unwritten rules that are really having an impact on people's health. And that's why our project is looking to advance policy changes, systems changes, environmental changes to make more of an impact on people's health. Next slide. Many of you are familiar with this slide about the difference between reality, equality, equity, and liberation. Point being removing barriers to people's health so everyone has the opportunity to live the healthiest life they can. Next slide. This is an overview of the process that we foresee municipalities taking, having a kickoff meeting between planning and public health to really form that relationship or hopefully help advance that relationship, creating a Plan for Health team similar to in Sustainable Jersey, where you might have a, for example, Sustainable Maplewood team. This would be a Plan for Health team that would include a wide net of community stakeholders and residents in the team. That next step would be conducting something similar to a community health needs assessment. So if your community has already done this, you can skip ahead. But as we know, this is a community-led, hopefully, process where you're getting feedback through surveys, interviews, focus groups, as well as looking at local data and statistics. Preparing a demographic profile and baseline report so you can really understand what are the main health issues, outcomes, and community conditions that you should be focusing on. And then finding in the toolkit where do those land use recommendations around things like encouraging physical activity, reducing asthma, promoting or giving people a break from heat islands. So finding that language and those sample ordinances within the toolkits. And then we go through a process of how to encourage the adoption of ordinances and policies by promoting resident and civic engagement in the process. And then the end goal is really implementing a health in all policies approach where every time your township committee or governing body is making a decision, they are considering health in that decision and what impact will this new policy, new building, new redevelopment plan, et cetera, what kind of impact is that going to have on our community's health?
All we have for you today. I don't know if we have a few minutes for questions, but just to give you a brief overview of our next steps, we've been talking a lot about the website. It will be in development very soon and will be open to the public later in the winter. We are presenting a presentation similar to this at the New Jersey League of Municipalities next Tuesday, 2 p.m. If anyone's there, you are more than welcome to join us. And we have our grant program starting in January. So I think that's all we have. So thank you very much for listening and for being here. And thank you all for the work that you do out in the world. Thank you to Robin for putting this presentation together and making some last minute tweaks. Appreciate it. Yeah, I guess we have 3 minutes, I think, if anyone has any questions.
And we really want to go back to the second to last slide, Robin, so they can access the QR
Oh,
code,
the
and the link
evaluation.
is
Yeah.
there too in the chat. Thanks.
Yes,
Yes.
I just added the link.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, well, not seeing any questions. Kathy. Kathy's raised her hand.
Hi there.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you, we are back in the Lifelong Strong New Jersey campaign for a multi-sector plan on aging. And Candace and I have talked before about how this weaves in. And one of the things that we're starting to look at is the potential for data collection and how we overlay it with what is already existing in New Jersey. So I just um, wanted to know, are you like set? Have you closed out your data and evaluation plans? Are you open to more integration? Or who can I talk to introduce to our potential data person?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be an evolving project over time. We certainly have our deliverables for our grants,
Mhm.
which ends at the end of 2026.
Okay.
But beyond that, we hope that this project lives on where we can integrate more data as it's available. So yeah, if you have a contact that we should be getting in touch with, please let us know. Sounds like you know Candace, so I'm sure you can pass that information along to her, and she can pass it along to our GIS folks.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Sure.
And Kathy did not do herself justice. She's the executive director for the Association for Aging Well, if I got the name right, Kathy?
Close enough. Yep.
Which is a statewide organization, so she's a great person to know. Thanks, Kathy.
I'll be in touch.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Well, I think we're just about at the end of our time here. So thank you everyone for spending your lunch hour with us. Really appreciate it. If you could please fill out the evaluation, we would be most appreciative of that. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions or thoughts. We are here. Okay. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
Thank
Have a
Thanks,
you.
great weekend,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks for
thank
joining.
you. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.